Rahu y Ketu. So yeah, right now I'm going through an inverse nodal return. Some people call that a reverse nodal return. So it's a pretty interesting time. First, let's cover the basics of Rahu y Ketu. See, I can't roll my tongue. I just never got it clipped. So when I was a baby, some people know what I'm talking about. Not everyone has that experience, but yeah, I'm not gonna show the camera my mouth, but I have a little string like attached to my tongue, and I can't really roll my tongue for that reason. So yeah, Rahu, the head of the dragon, right? It's the northern node, the north lunar node of the moon. Some people would say that the lunar nodes are not actually planets, in a sense, right? Because if we're talking Jyotish, we're talking Vedic astrology, even when you look at the yogas in a birth chart, um, the yogas are formed and created by the five real planets, the sun, um, Jupiter, Mars, Saturn, Venus, you know. Oh, I'm sorry, no, not the sun, exclude that. Mercury, Mars, Venus, Saturn, Jupiter. Because the sun, the moon, the lunar nodes, those you could if you're understanding of this stuff and you're not totally new to it, you could understand why they're not totally considered planets, just like the Earth, right? So moving forward with that, yeah. So Rahu, you have a nodal return when you turn 18 years old. So that's pretty big deal. To me, that's when your shit is hot. You get your you get your driver's license, you get your ID, you're legal, and it's like as above, so below. As within, so without. So it's kind of like it's always interesting how it works because the cosmos are really living through us and like they're really translating like what's going on in like the outer realms as well as well as the inner realms. So yeah, when you turn 18 years old, when you turn 36 years old, very similar timings. It's like 18, you got your nodal return. When you were born, like in your kundali, in your natal birth chart, wherever the north node, aka Rahu, was at, it takes 18 years for it to transit all the way back around to get to that same placement. So that being said, it's like your shit is hot, you know what I mean? Like the energy is working in your favor, you know what I mean? Like North Node, if you know about North Node, it's like it's highly ambitious energy. It could almost be your hyper ambitious energy. The thing is, Rahu is a get what you want at all costs type of energy. So even if it's unethical, right? Um, and I haven't been through Rahu Dasha, but I've been through Rahu Antar Dashas and been aware of them. I've had Rahu transits my chart and been aware of it. We all have a North Node. And if you find your relationship with Rahu, then think about that hyper ambitious energy that you have with that. Like, for example, I have Rahu and Virgo. So I could be a little hyper ambitious with Virgo tendencies and natures and stuff like that. Anyone who knows me personally knows I'm gonna get the medicine, you know what I mean, knows I'm about my Virgo things in a lot of various ways. So yeah, so nodal returns are pretty cool. I think that's when you kind of like get a break because the nodes, I mean, this is the reason that we have eclipses is because of the nodes, you know? So they're a big deal. They definitely are a big deal in your chart when they transit yearly, when we have the eclipses and stuff like that, seasonally. So they're a big deal. So Rahu gets kind of a bad rap, but really, like, you need someone like that, People compare the planets sometimes, and that I will say is up for interpretation. I don't really like leaving things hanging at like, oh, well, it's just your perspective about it because it's like, no, sometimes it's a foundation of principle. Like for example, I'm gonna make a different video about this. Well, actually, I'm not even gonna get into it because it's gonna open up a whole can of worms. I'm just gonna stick with Rahu and Ketu, but there's some foundations of principles that are not up for interpretation. If you're doing the math correctly, if you're doing how it's taught, but there are certain things that are up for interpretation, and one of those being comparing planets, right? So to me, it's interesting because K2 gets more compared to Mars in a sense. Um, and I'll get into that in this video. Um, I can see that because Scorpio is co-ruled by K2 in Jyotish, so I think that's where the connection lies. But I gotta give it to Rahu. I feel like Rahu is a little bit more like a mix of like mercurial, like Mercury, kind of like Mars at the same time. Because the thing is, like, Rahu's clever, and it can be unethical. Whereas like Mars, it's a little bit more has a little bit more dignity to some extent. Um, Definitely, you know what I mean. Like Rahu matters could be why you get swindled. You know what I mean? You go and look at like a bhukti, right? Because you look at like the mahadashas, which are the periods of your life when a planet basically is the theme of that, right? Those planetary themes are gonna have a huge influence at that time. And then you got the Antardashas, which are like the sub periods within those themes, and then you got the Bhuktis, which are even like sub themes within that. But the Bhuktis are more like the other people coming into your life. So let's say you're running a Mercury Mahadasha, and then you got a Rahu Bhukti in it, then careful, because someone might mess with your mind to swindle you in some kind of way. But Rahu needs its respect because Rahu could be why you get something done, straight up, honestly. And it's just like Rahu is almost like Robin Hood type energy, right? Like steal from the rich, give to the poor. Like the thing is, Rahu's not ethical, but if you have it in an ethical sign, then it could make more of a difference in that sense. Um, so Rahu is an interesting factor. Check your chart. Check and see where Rahu is in your chart, because that's going to be where you have a lot of ambition. So Rahu matures at the age of 42. Whereas K2, the shadow planet, they're always coinciding with each other. You're never going to have Rahu, aka North Node, in the sign of, let's say, Virgo, and then you got the South Node like in Sagittarius. It never works that way. It's always going to be in the polar sign. So if you got North Node, aka Rahu and Sag, you definitely have South Node, K2, in the polarizing sign of Gemini. So it's always working in the opposite signs. Um, so with Rahu, um, it's definitely a good time when you have. I mean, who didn't like being 18 years old? It was fun, right? It's like now you're out into the world. No one's really paying attention to you that much, but you got the awareness of like the world. It's a fun time. You know what I mean? And so, but then you got your inverse nodal returns. That's when your natal north node is in the south node for what the globe is experiencing, basically, like the raw transits of what we're all experiencing. That's when you have it backwards, basically. I'm going through that right now. So to me, I'll speak on this because I can. It's my first time. Unless you're 27, you never had this happen before. I'm 28. um, so having the inverse nodal return, to me, that's like sleeping in the daytime and working when in like the nighttime. You know, that's like that's like being at like the opposite times of people. So like for me, like I'm trying to work. I'm trying to get a job. Nobody wants to work, you know? Like Virgo, work. You know what I mean? Earth signs, work. You know what I mean? So it can benefit you because like the overall theme, the overall wave, the overall globe is going away from that energy, and you're actually going towards it. So that could be to your benefit. It could be why. I mean, like if you're having a highly afflicted inverse nodal return, or a reverse nodal return, as some other people would call it, same thing. That could be why like your timing is hella off. You know, it still happens to me currently right now. But at times, you know what I mean. But if you master it and you're listening carefully and you work, and because like I say, I'm always going to say this on this channel. I'm always going to say this when it comes to astrology in general. Nothing is ever a death sentence. You got to be real about that. Come on now. You know what I mean? Doesn't matter if you got a bunch of debilitations, no debilitations, all exaltations. You know what I mean? Like nothing is ever going to make your life totally easy. Nothing's ever going to make your life totally hard. It can be reasonings of why and how that these transits come to be. Like when you start figuring them out, but all it is, all astrology is good for is just information, awareness. But you're never going to, oh, this is my unpopular opinion, you're never just going to soar over the clouds and like not experience problems in your life because of the transits. All I can do is be like, that motherfucker's got this issue going on, or this is why this happened, or whatever. And it's just like, you got to make it fun, because if it's not fun to you, then you can get trapped in this knowledge. If you don't believe in God, you know what I mean? If you don't have a strong foundation, you can get trapped in the knowledge. Anything, doesn't matter what it is. If it's medical science, if it's worldly issues, if it's drama, gossip, relationships, um, anything you could think of, you can get lost in without the power of God. So, so be rooted, be grounded, you know, in things. There's a beautiful saying that says, strong roots, you know, like basically the gist of it, because I'm going to butcher the quote. Basically, the gist of it is that like when the roots are strong in a tree, you know what I mean? Like even the strongest winds, and like imagine the winds being like worldly energy, you know, like even the strongest winds cannot break that tree because the roots are so deep. So to me, I'm going to represent that with like God, you know, like have that be your roots, you know what I mean? Have a foundation, whatever it is you believe in. I believe in the Almighty, you know. That's why I resonate with the Quran, and they say Allah because they recognize there's many gods, but that is the one God, the true God, the God of all gods, Allah. So I think everybody has truth to it, you know. Every religion, you know. So I'm never gonna say it's one size fits all for everything. Never gonna say that. Um, but you know, you have your preferences. It's okay to choose your path and not try to be everything, because then that's how you start dabbling and start thinking you can do what other people can do, and you start dabbling in shit that's not for you, or you start trying to do things the way other people do it, and then you're out of your purpose. So you know, not everyone could do it. Not everyone's got Libra in their chart. Not everyone is balanced. Not everyone's got good discernment, you know. But if you have that, then utilize it, you know, because everyone has something to offer. We can all be an example. We can all be leaders in our own way. You know, that's Age of Aquarius type shit, you know. So now moving forward, talking about K2. I'm going through that Mahadasha right now myself, so I know what it's like. K2 represents loss, and to summarize it up in a lot of ways. And it's a malefic. Both of them are considered malefics, Rahu and Ketu. But Ketu is more of the stronger malefic, because like we say, like we've been uncovering on this channel, malefics really all they do is they just make it easier to be punished, you know. Whereas like one of my teachers, I call her my teacher, but she's a teacher to everyone. Great astrologer on YouTube. Not even that well known, but I love listening to her information. I don't know her name personally. I think it's like Heart Light Astrology, I think. Um, anyways, she talks about Jupiter being like Santa Claus, right? Kind of a little bit of a childish comparison, but I resonate with that because like the great benefic, right? Jupiter, it's like these benefics such as Jupiter is more about like blessing you irregardless if you're deserving of it, you know? Whereas Saturn is all about like did you earn it, you know? Like they would say like in mythology like the god of agriculture, right? So, because it takes time, and you have to earn it, and you need skill and all that stuff. So, yeah, so I would akin K2 to Saturn in some sense. The only difference is that Saturn wants you to work hard, and K2 can punish you for working hard. Because the thing is, if you're being hyper ambitious, if you're approaching something in like Rahu-ish type matters, um, K2 could could make you face some loss for that, because it's more about surrendering and just understanding the energy. It's more about understanding and surrendering. Because through that, you get stripped of everything, and then you realize, like, you are all you got, you're all you need, and you're already equipped. Like they say, the grass is greener where you're standing. The grass is greener where you water it, right? So don't be trying to go way out there when you're dealing with K2-ish matters. Like, if you're K2vian, if you got strong K2 nakshatra lords in your chart, specifically in the moon, because in Jyotish we learn that we are all the signs. Your placements are not accessories to who you are. You are that sign. You got Jupiter in Sagittarius, you are Sagittarius. If you're moon in Pisces, you are Pisces. Um, so it's important to look at it that way, because then you can really take full accountability, and you can really learn the karmas behind these. That's what I love about Jyotish, is about the karmas. It's not about like pop astrology, like, oh, well, like you're Leo, so you have these kind of traits, and you act like this. It's like, no, because you're Leo, you have these kind of karmas. It's very much more in depth. And so it makes you watch how you step a little bit more. It's just knowledge. If you love the knowledge and you have fun with it, then it's for you. So back to K2. Um, currently going through a K2 Sun Antardasha. So in my K2 Mahadasha, Sun Antardasha, and I'll probably make a separate video about that. But what I will say in a nutshell, it's like now I'm putting myself in front of things, because I'm letting go. I'm like not trying to, and to make sense of that, for because I'm always aware that there could be people who are not that hip on the information. Some of you are probably scholars, some of you probably know a lot more than I do. But just to kind of have it full circle for the people who might not know, it's like Leo is about putting yourself out front of there. Leo is the sunshine. Leo is bold, right? It is the lion in the jungle. It's like, whereas like Aquarius, the polar sign, is like an equalizer. Hey, we're all the same. Everybody be the same. You know what I mean? Like, nobody do too much. You know what I mean? Like, let's all be the same. It's like, not saying Aquarius isn't about uniqueness in any kind of way, but you'll notice it's about Aquarian matters. Like, to me, I think like globalization is very Aquarian. Um, Whereas like Leo is like segregation. You know what I mean? Like, our people for us. You know what I mean? Like, my country for me. You know what I mean? Like, my crew for me. You know what I mean? Like, it's very like there's this they say, actually, I heard it from an astrologer before, like bigotry, or like Leo rules bigotry, right? And I could see that, because it's like the sun wants to shine for itself, right? And even in your birth chart, if you have the sun in a placement like same as Mercury, because Mercury, Venus, and Mars don't really travel too far from the sun. So let's say you got Mercury and the sun in the same sign. Now it's combust, right? Depending on the degrees and depending on the sign, it can vary in different ways. But like sun is king, so like sun's not trying to share the place with anybody else. You know what I mean? Sun wants to be in that house by itself. So in a way, it actually could benefit you to have sun, like only one placement in your sun sign. You know what I mean? So I know we love to take pride in our sun. You know what I mean? I'm actually gonna go through a video talking about the different planets in my takes on them. But like, just to share something right here and now, to me the sun is like the kingdom of where you come from. It's almost like your tribe. Like, I've seen people be dead ass wrong before, and like if our birthdays are close and we share like the same sun sign, sometimes like, fuck, like they're like they're like my neighbor, like they're like my tribe, like they're like my family. So sometimes you could feel that with people with the same sun sign placement as you, because it's glory, it's like your power, right? um so yeah, sun is interesting. um but it's not a hyper ambitious thing. K2 is about, it's just like let it go, right? Um, and so, yeah, so Rahu Ketu, so going through your reverse nodal returns, your inverse nodal returns, that happens, the first one is at 27, because this is the age of being like, like, especially as a man, like, it's like, like, I'm not a boy anymore. Like, especially in this day and age, I don't got all the grown man assets that maybe my parents did back in the fucking 80s, 70s, however old your parents are. Um, because things don't cost the same that it does, and they've pigeonholed us financially, especially in America. People, I mean, yeah, it's a place to make money, but if you're on your own, uh, you know, blessings if you're not. Um, but if you're on your own, it's like we make a lot of money here, but we spend equally amount as much, maybe even more. So it's not what people think exactly, honestly. So it could benefit you to take your money elsewhere. It could benefit you to live at home and maybe not have to pay rent or pay minimal rent. But if you're doing everything on your own back, then yeah, it could be hard here in America. But I'm not gonna get too trying to stick with astrology. I don't want to get too political. We can make other videos about that. Um, but 27 is an interesting age with your inverse nodal return because you'll see if you're already past that age or if you haven't gotten to that age or if you're in that age right now, like I am. It's just that interesting time where it's like you're kind of in between worlds. You know what I mean? It's like it's in your alignment, it's in your axis, so you're feeling it, but at the same time, it's like it's not really working in your favor in a sense, but like we're saying, nothing is ever a death sentence, so it can work in your favor. Something not working in your favor can work in your favor. Understand that. Seriously, truly. So, because it just makes you stronger. So, what do you think is going to happen when it finally gets back into your placement? It's just strength. It's just strength. You know what I mean? So, I've said this about the Mars retrograde. I'm saying this about inverse nodal returns. It can be times in your life where they're turning points where it's like you're almost being tested by like the most high to be like, are you gonna fucking like shoot yourself in the foot? You know what I mean? Like, are you gonna crash and burn? You gonna give it all up? Are you gonna turn villain? You know what I mean? Because better days are on the way. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. And and if you don't fight for that, and if you don't see that, and you don't embody that, then this too shall pass, right? Um, and when it does, then you'll realize like you cooked up a storm for yourself for nothing, and don't underestimate the snowball effect. Don't underestimate doing bad for yourself and getting used to that, and then letting time pass, and then realizing like, shit, I feel better now, but I got so caught up in my ways of being self-destructive that now I don't know how to get out of that, or or worse, So, and I do want to share a story about this too shall pass. If you haven't already heard this story, there's a beautiful story about a um, a master, right? I'm pretty sure this takes place in China and like the Zen like type environments and stuff like that. So the Grand Master and like the student, have their relationship, and the student comes to the master and he goes, Master. He goes, I'm having such a terrible time. Nothing's going my way. Everything's going wrong. Blah 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 blah. Complaints. And then the master wisely just tells it to him. He goes, this too shall pass. And and he digests it, and he goes back to him a week later and he goes, Master, you're right, I feel amazing, it passed, like I feel great, I'm on top of the world, like everything's working in my favor now. And the master, same response, this too shall pass. So the lesson in that is just like when things are not going in your favor and things are not going well, just know this too shall pass. And at some point, it is going to be in your favor. Things are going to be better, or things are going to be normal again at some point. And when you're on top, right? Um, don't shit on people. Don't be extra. Don't be crazy. Don't be cuckoo. You know what I mean? Don't be mean. Don't be just know that like one day you're not going to be at the top of the food chain. You know what I mean? So be humble when you're on top, and have faith and be optimistic when you're at the bottom, because this too shall pass no matter what. Um, so yeah, just a quick note on the nodes Rahu and Ketu. Um, Some other key points about them. Yeah, like K2, very much about like I think the way to get in K2's good graces is just understanding surrender, understanding water dissolves the rock. Um, and so don't be too forceful. Anything that you're too forceful about, you're gonna get checked. You're gonna lose it. You know what I mean? Loss will occur in that Mahadasha. Um, and maybe I'll do a separate video here in a moment after this one just about the K2 Mahadasha in general. Not an expert. I haven't finished my Mahadasha yet. I'm like 3 years in. It lasts for 7 years. Um, but I've been learning a lot, and a lot of it has to do with loss because a lot of the times that's the only way we'll learn is by losing things, right? So so yeah, North Node, South Node. Yeah, the so another thing I want to add too is that with it being the head of the dragon, Rahu being head of the dragon, um, it's almost like the mouth that doesn't have to stop eating, right? It's almost like an insatiable energy. I didn't want to get to the ages of maturity as well. So Rahu matures at 42 because that's what we're ambitious towards. That's what we know that we don't know, and we want to learn it. We want to master it. We want to get good at it. And with K2, it's what we come into this life already knowing. Some actually can associate it with past life. Um, and so we come into this life already knowing our K2 factors, right? And so because of that, it's almost like the best example that I use is like imagine if a person came to you and was like, "Here's imagine if you're a man, imagine if a woman came to you and was like, "Here's a book on how to be a boy," or "Here's a book on how to be a man." Or if you're a woman, imagine if a man comes up to you and he's like, here's a book on how to be a woman." So you'd be like, "The fuck? Like I already know that. I already am that." You know what I mean? And little did you know that there's some information in the book you didn't know. So that's why K2 matures at 49 because we already know it. So a lot of the times it brings stubbornness because we don't feel like we have to dive into those aspects too much. Um, but sometimes we do. Sometimes we miss the spot, right? So yeah, another tip about that. And then K2 is like the tail of the dragon. It's almost like always having to digest, right? And it didn't even eat. It's not even responsible for this stuff. It's all about karma, you know? It's like, so yeah, astrology is interesting. It's very beautiful. It's an art. It's a clock. It's a science. It's a language. So when you're into that, if you, I think you have to be into psychology. You have to want to understand yourself. You have to want to understand other people and the world. Those three things: yourself, other people, and the world. If you're into those things and you like the psychology of stuff, Jyotish is for you. Astrology is for you. I don't recommend getting into Western astrology because you'll never find a Jyotish Vedic astrologer who's like, yeah, and all my climbing up ladder and all my learning, I finally realized the Western was the truth. You'll never hear it. You only hear the opposite. You only hear people being like, yeah, I studied Western for a long time, finally realized Vedic was the truth, Jyotish is the truth. So that's where the cookie crumbles. I'm not playing favorites. Like in Western, I'm a Scorpio. You know what I mean? Like I used to think that was a super cool sign. You know what I mean? I still do, but it's like don't have any pride with this stuff. It's almost similar to your health. It's like don't have any pride with it. Just understand the transits and the placements that are going on in your chart, and be truthful about it. Surrender to it. You know what I mean? It can't hurt you. So just acknowledge it. And like when I found out I was a Pisces moon, and I had been acknowledging myself as an Aries moon for years, I like was like, oh my gosh. I was like, I make so much sense, right? But the thing is, one thing I will give Western credit for is that it is still math, it is still science, and you still can get to results. Maybe not the most accurate results, but I find it interesting and divine that the elements that you're dealing with, you'll notice you're always continuously dealing with in your other divinations, right? So study your Chinese, study your Jyotish, and you probably already know your Western. So yeah, this is mainly about the nodes. Obviously, always have other things to talk about, Appreciate you guys tuning in. I'm gonna post this on the public, and yeah, thank you. Look forward to more videos, and I'll see you guys next time.